stage 20 minutes. Est-ce que tu as salé, René? Oui. Moi je vais commencer les sacs.
Le fais en premier? Non. Tu l'as vu l'enfant?
2 années. Je vais pas trop avancer parce que sinon on va pas y arriver. T'as des petites box aussi? Ouais, c'est juste dans la caisse. Ok.
Vous allez là-bas?
Non, c'est les sachets qui sont... Là, ouais, donc encore oui, de toute façon, non, ici on a que là-bas et en face il faut avoir de l'omelette, mais ici on n'a pas... Ok, bah pourquoi tu me dis? Et voilà. Tu me dis.
Good morning, everyone. Please take your seats. We are starting our meeting. And I just want to warn you that I will speak Polish, so take your headphones. Since it's the most beautiful language in the world. Easy to learn if you're wishing. Ready? Off we go.
Dear guests, dear speakers, dear participants, I'm truly honored to open our interparliamentary committee meeting of the Committee on Women's Rights that we are organizing on the occasion of International Women's Day in this year. And I have to tell you that we missed you because our recent meetings were remote. This year, our meeting will be devoted to gender aspects of energy poverty. We are very pleased, and I would like to point out that we do have so many members from 16 EU national parliaments attending, but also colleagues from the European Parliament. And I am very pleased to welcome you all on this very important occasion, and we will have a great pleasure listening to your contributions in our debate and in this debate on energy poverty, which is a phenomenon that affects all our countries. Before we proceed to the debate, I will have a few technical announcements. This event is organized in collaboration with the Directorate for Relations with National Parliaments. Welcome to the representatives of this directorate. We have interpretation available in all EU languages. You can listen to me in all your languages, and also the meeting is web streamed, so the entire world can watch us. Please behave. And also please note that time for interventions is really limited, so there will be a clock displayed throughout the event, which will be visible behind me, so we can monitor the time of interventions. In order to ask the floor, members of national parliaments need to fill in the speaking card, and once they've been given the floor, they have to press the speak button. Now, to today's issue of gender aspects of energy poverty. I think we are all aware of the fears, of the challenges that we are facing in the context of the ever-worsening economical situation on our continent. The EU is facing a growing and persistent challenge of actual energy poverty. Estimates say that about 125 million citizens of the EU are affected. Since 2021, the energy shortage has led to inflation in the Eurozone reaching its highest level in history. First, the COVID-19 crisis, then the crisis resulting from the Russian war in Ukraine have exacerbated the economic and social difficulties many people in Europe were already facing, and in particular, as usual with all crises, women. Many households on our continent struggle to afford the rising costs of energy and to keep their homes adequately heated. I'd like to remind you that even before the war broke out, 7% of EU households were not able to pay their bills. 6% could not sufficiently heat their homes. So you have to imagine the situation now. Of those who are most vulnerable We know that single mothers and single women are more likely than men to struggle with paying energy bills. Around half of single mothers and about 1/3 of single women are among those having largest difficulties in this area. The reasons for this are well known. Many women have lower average incomes. They work part-time. They also work in low-paid or precarious forms of employment. Many women do not own their home, their apartment. They are dependent on their husband, partner, economically. And also, many women work without pay, for example, in the household. So as with the pandemic crisis, the consequences of energy prices on individuals and small businesses, but also deindustrialization, unemployment, and recession are disproportionately affecting women because of their already lower participation in the labor market and existing gender gaps in many sectors. We will probably hear about that from our experts today. This cost of living crisis negatively impacts women's economic and social inclusion, their health, risk of domestic violence, and their fundamental rights. So this makes it harder for women with low or no income to escape abuse and domestic violence from a partner to whom they are, as I just mentioned, also financially tied. We can also observe that many women are reporting being forced to give up medical care more often due to rising costs, to longer waiting times and shortages of doctors and medication. Around 1/3 of people say they have given up on treatment in 2022. 1/3. Over the past few years, our committee has taken various steps to address this pressing issue. In 2022, the FAM committee adopted an opinion on the proposal for a directive on energy efficiency and called for specific measures to combat the feminization of energy poverty. It also provided guidelines and requests that gender be mainstreamed into the energy transition. The same year, the FAM committee carried out a report on women poverty in Europe, which calls on the EU and its member states to integrate a gender perspective into policies and practices addressing the lack of access to affordable and adequate housing and energy. I would just like to remind you that the EU does not have a common definition of energy poverty. In the report, we also urge to develop specific strategies aimed at eradicating these problems by 2030 and ensuring that services effectively meet the needs of homeless women. I do hope that this interparliamentary committee meeting, on the occasion of International Women's Day, will explore ways in which gender equality requirements can be integrated into policies and initiatives at the EU national and local levels in order to alleviate the energy poverty problem. So now I would like to give the floor to our great Vice President of the European Parliament, a great friend of our committee, who is always here when we invite him, is always a man who is very involved in the fight for gender equality and women's rights. I think we both believe that there is a special place reserved in hell for women who do not, for men who do not support women. So I would like now to ask the Vice President of the European Parliament to deliver the opening remarks for our historic interparliamentary committee meeting. Dimitrios, probably in your mother tongue, you have the floor.
wanted to give you a possibility to compare if the Polish or the Greek are attractive and easy to be learned.
So I should like to thank you for the invitation, and I'd like to congratulate the FAM committee as well as its president, Mr. Robert Piedron, for deciding to celebrate the Women's Day by discussing a very pressing issue to avoid general discussions. The pressing issue is, how does energy crisis affect the gender equality goal? This pre-existed the Putin's invasion into Ukraine, but it has become worse ever since. Robert gave a few figures. The truth is that the already existing inequalities against the poorer households, the poorer people, and women, as well as the younger and older citizens, which pre-existed, have been integrated into this crisis and have now become worse. Half single women last year, before Putin's invasion, had difficulty in heating up their houses and pay their bills. And poorer families who had older houses or poorly built houses, poorly insulated houses, had to spend more energy in order to heat them. Robert mentioned 120 million that, according to Eurostat, are already below the poverty line. Well, this number has risen already, and among them, the majority is women. In single-parent families, the vast majority are women and unmarried mothers. And during the crisis, a number of businesses which needed to deal with the inflation, with the supply chain crisis, increased the pay gap between men and women. And since women are mostly working in precarious jobs, the ratio between men and women is even worse as regards safe jobs. And that is how the gap worsened. So the question for us, the European legislators, is what do we do about it? Do we just record the figures? No, this is the job of Eurostat, not of the European Parliament. Our job is to see what we can do in order to decrease the inequalities, and what we cannot do altogether, what we can do altogether at a European level. Is what each member state doing individually enough? Well, the situation tells us, facts tell us that it is not enough, because there are larger countries that have larger margins to support their vulnerable households and businesses and women. But what does Europe do? Does the European Union do what they can do? So, as the president of the high-level group for gender equality, which the majority of which are women and who have made me the honor of making me their president for the last 9 years, I say that Europe is not doing enough. And I also say, as a member of the Budget committee member, where I need to go immediately because their meeting started at 9 o'clock and are discussing important issues. Anyway, and just like in order to deal with the pandemic, we set up a tool, the Next Generation EU, the RRF, the Recovery Fund. These are technical terms. Anyway, the European Commission, the European Union has got from the banks 750 million euros in order to deal with the crisis and create new tools. This is what we have to do regarding the gender issues, not to scrape the bottom of the barrel in order to see what has been left over from other policies in order to deal with that. It is impossible for us to deal with this social challenges that make gender equality much, much worse with a budget, an EU budget of the order of 1% of the total. And the gender dimension, social and gender equality dimension, should not be left out horizontally and not be mainstreamed in every policy and every program. Some steps have been taken in the budget of 2023 regarding some pilot projects. This is not enough. We need to set up new instruments as well as to increase the EU budget in the medium term, because we have already exhausted the reserves of the MMF up until 2027. And in order to avoid the dispute between the net contributors and net receivers, which leads to a bad situation, we need to increase the own resources of the Union on the basis of the agreement between Commission and Council. We cannot deal with this crisis with 1% of EU GDP at the point when the corresponding budget in the US is 20%. If we don't do more on equality issues at a European level, we are going to be faced with a serious problem, and populist, anti-European, ultra-conservative voices will be strengthened. They exist within the Union, and they are against equality. They are in the so-called traditional approach, whereby women should stay at home and raise their children. So we need to do more. So I believe that this debate is not only going to register the facts, but we are going to listen to ideas and proposals about what can be done in order to improve the situation and to be able to offer better services to our citizens, especially the more vulnerable citizens, at an EU level. Therefore, women will benefit because they are the ones who are those who lose from this situation. We just want to look at the monthly Eurobarometer, whereby the vast majority of our citizens require specific things, and the European Parliament is much closer to these wishes, aspirations, and requests. Inside the Council, where the government representatives sit, we see selfishness and nationalist prejudices. They say, why do we need to do something altogether if I am able to deal with my situation in my country? No, but there is a gap. and the gap is being filled by voices saying that the European Union has failed. We need to go back to the nation state. So those of us who wish a better and higher, more, those of us wish for more Europe, we need to work to strive for the European Union to have more means to fight inequalities, to move away from this very commonplace, too little, too late, which is a characteristic of what we do. We don't have much time. I believe that in the coming year, up until the next European elections, we should walk faster. The European Parliament is willing to proceed. The European Commission is making some proposals, but the big problem lies with the governments, which discuss and discuss and discuss and postpone and postpone. And let me give you an ancient Greek expression, keri ou meneti, meaning there's no time for further postponement. The time is not right. And for us to achieve the global equality of genders, we need 182 years. And for the European Union to achieve this goal will require more than 60 years, according to estimates. History will not be easy on us if we allow it to happen. Thank you.
Dziękuję, panie przewodniczący.
Thank you, Chair. We certainly need to act. Thank you for your inspiring provocation, as usual. I hope it will also offer some solutions, as you suggested, solutions which will really solve actual problems of the citizens of the European Union. Thank you once again. Thank you. I know you will have to leave us soon, our meeting, but I'm quite sure we shall send you the summary of our conclusions so that we can coordinate our work and combat poverty. So thank you very much. Once again, thank you for your presence. And now, time to move to the part where we shall listen to our experts. First, the political part, now we have the expert part. And the first person to take the floor will be a Director of UN Women in Brussels, Laurence Guillois. Good morning, Director. I would like just to tell you that UN Women does not need to be introduced. We cooperate not only in the European Parliament, but also in member states and in the EU in general. This organization is very important. However, in September last year, UN Women published a document on global energy crisis in impact on access to energy and to food availability and food security and nutrition. I'm quite sure you will refer to the document which you have with you. So, Laurence Guillois, Head of UN Women, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the kind introduction. And I see you broke the news already. Thank you very much for the invitation to join the Interparliamentary Committee meeting on the occasion of International Women's Day 2023. Excellencies, distinguished panelists and colleagues, it is a pleasure to join the panel and have the opportunity to exchange on the co-benefits of achieving gender equality and addressing energy poverty. As you know, gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls is central to the transition to sustainable energy and ensuring universal energy access, as well as progress towards all sustainable development goals. Gender-responsive and women-led initiatives and projects have widely demonstrated that they can be successful in the new energy space, including providing sustainable energy solutions at different levels. Women are also increasingly active in the energy workforce, and we'll hear about it, and as entrepreneurs in micro, small, and medium enterprises, contributing to sustainable and industrial development. Women and girls are agents of change as consumers, as producers, innovators, and decision makers across the energy sector. Yet, women and girls disproportionately experience energy poverty and are those who bear the brunt of unequal access to sustainable, affordable, and clean energy sources. And this was said in the introduction. Globally, this affects particularly rural women and girls living in least developed countries. In the EU, women are also particularly affected by energy poverty, as they represent 85% of single-parent families, as was said also in the introduction, which have also a particular high risk of child poverty. This does not only hinder the development of their full potential and their enjoyment of a range of human rights, including access to education and right to work, but also contributes to increasing their risk of being exposed to gender-based violence and reduces their access to quality health care. Moreover, it also contributes to their time poverty due to the burden of unpaid care and domestic work that is placed on women and girls, particularly so in rural areas. Increasingly, the disproportionate impact of the climate and environmental emergencies on women's and girls' energy poverty have been compounded by the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine, as again was said in the introduction, reversing progress on the 2030 agenda and on gender equality. Soaring costs of oil and gas due to the war in Ukraine have had deleterious effects on women's and girls' energy poverty and already unequal access to energy, as highlighted in the study that was mentioned, the global gendered impacts of the Ukraine crisis on energy access and food security and nutrition, which was published last year in collaboration with the UN Global Crisis Response Group. Looking now at solutions, because we are invited to look at solutions as well. A sustainable energy transition, crucial for climate change mitigation, environmental conservation, and disaster risk reduction, offers both challenges and opportunities for the resilience of women. But a just transition can only be achieved through the full and equal participation, leadership, and decision-making of women and girls. This requires ensuring the voices and participation of women in all their diversity are headed both as gender equality advocates and as target groups of policies and programs within the gender energy nexus. In fact, significant evidence shows that energy interventions that take into account women's needs and priorities are more likely to have a positive impact on addressing household and community energy poverty and on gender equality more broadly. Integrating gender equality perspectives into renewable energy policy not only makes sense socially and environmentally, but it also makes good economic sense. In rural context, for example, freeing up women's time from unpaid domestic care work through basic infrastructure and access to clean, modern energy opens up more time in a day, contributing to local economies while, of course, promoting women's economic empowerment and poverty alleviation. Increasing women's access to decent work and leadership of organizations and companies in the energy sector is critical not only for gender equality and women's economic empowerment, but also to enhance efficiency, innovation, and sustainability. In renewable energy, Women make up 32% of the renewable energy workforce compared to 22% in conventional energy. But they are concentrated in lower paying non-technical positions. Women occupy 31% of mid-management positions, but are strikingly underrepresented in senior positions and in policy-making and decision-making. Gender and disaggregated data are needed to create a more comprehensive assessment of energy value chains, which not only clarify differences in energy access, but also reveal the often invisible framework of needs and impacts that compound inequities in access for underrepresented groups. And as the UN Secretary General confirmed, no program, large or small, can be considered to be sustainable or contributing to resilience if it increases rather than decreases the unpaid care and domestic work of women and girls. To address these interconnected issues, it is key to work with multiple and diverse stakeholders on coordination, on policy and programmatic initiatives. Within the EU, for example, the Social Climate Fund represents a great opportunity to ensure the mainstreaming of gender equality and equal opportunities, taking into consideration the specific situation of women and girls in all their diversity. And in external relations of the EU, the upcoming midterm review of the Gender Action Plan 3 represents another great opportunity to look at the interlinkages between gender equality and the energy policies globally as well. Finally, as you may know, in a few days, the 67th Commission on the Status of Women will start on 6th of March in New York, and we look in depth on the topic of innovation and technological change and education in the digital age for achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. The digital transition represents at the same time risks and opportunities. And it will be, and many actually of these risks and opportunities intersects with energy issues. So it will be also a very good moment to link digital innovation and addressing the gender aspects of energy poverty. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the next contributions and to the exchange afterward. Thank you.
Dziękujemy serdecznie pani dyrektorko za...
Thank you very much, Director, for those inspiring words. We will indeed meet in New York in a few days in order to discuss, also in the context of the energy crisis, at the 67th session of the Conference on the Status of Women. I think many national parliaments will also be represented at this session in New York. So I think there will be another occasion to deepen our cooperation with the UN and with UN Women in particular. So thank you once again, and congratulations also, because you have been with UN Women for quite a while, but you've only recently become director. So congratulations on the new position, and we are keeping our fingers crossed for you. So our next expert is Madame Ana de Sousa, who is a civil mechanical and petroleum engineer at the Technical Superior Institute of Lisbon. She has a huge wealth of experience in terms of energy production and energy transition. She's been awarded with many prestigious prizes. I don't think we have the time to enumerate all of those prizes and her great background, but I can tell you that she was awarded prizes for emerging problems in the exploration of hydrocarbons, how to better employ biomass, and how to use water for energy generation. So I wonder who will discuss with her on these topics. Mr. Sousa, the floor is yours for 10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dear Committee on Women's Rights and Gender Equality members, Mr. Chair Robert Biedron, dear attendees and panel colleagues, I am honored to speak with you today about the gender aspects of energy poverty, a critical issue that is affecting many households across Europe and particularly impacting women. Gender inequality is a prevalent issue that has been present for centuries, and its impacts are felt in all spheres of our life. One of the most affected sectors is energy sector. If women have limited access to energy resources, this leads to a lack of opportunities and to reduced quality of life. So this issue requires imminent attention. And as we work towards achieving gender equality, we must also address the energy poverty crisis. So what are the solutions to solve this problem? First of all, my colleague already mentioned that we need to collect data. Can we go to the previous slide? The previous one. Yes. So first of all, we need, it's too much. So first of all, we need to collect data, and already you have mentioned that we need to collect disaggregated data on energy uses and access. Here is an image of my country. And for instance, there are people that currently are using biomass in rural areas to cook. And this exposes them to harmful smoke emissions, causing respiratory illness. Thus, energy programs that provide clean cooking solutions should target women as primary beneficiaries. Second, we need to involve women in energy policy and decision-making processes. Despite being extremely affected by energy poverty, women are underrepresented in energy policy and decision-making. So by engaging women in these processes, we can ensure that their perspectives and needs are considered. Women can provide valuable insights into the energy sector and help design gender-responsive energy policies that benefit the entire society. Third, in designing energy infrastructure, it is necessary to keep women in mind. So women tend to have different energy needs than men. Designing energy infrastructures that consider these needs can help to ensure that women have access to the energy services they require. Women are most likely to be caregivers for children and for elderly family members. This means that they may spend more time at home and have a greater need to energy to power household appliances and consequently have higher energy bills. So To mitigate this problem, providing measures that ensure that homes are equipped with energy-efficient appliances will require the amount of energy needed to power them and help these caregivers. The next idea is to provide training and job opportunities to women in the energy sector. Encouraging women to pursue careers in the energy sector can help to address gender disparities. This can be achieved through education and vocational training programs that target women. The next idea that I want to share with you is to address this inequity in access to financial resources. Women often have less access to financial resources than men, which exacerbates the energy poverty crisis. Providing financial assistance that is accessible to women, such as through specific financial programs or family-focused policies, can help to address this issue. Academy can contribute to build capacity and raising awareness of energy poverty by offering training education programs for policymakers, practitioners, and committee members. Next slide, please. This program can help equip individuals and organizations with the knowledge and skills needed to design and implement effective energy policies and programs that prioritize gender equity and social inclusion. And in the next slide, we can see that if we can educate communities on the benefits of gender equality in energy access, we can have better results. In the next slide, we present here an idea. If we raise awareness about the links between gender equality and energy access, we can help to promote gender responsive energy policies and encourage communities to support the inclusion of women in energy decision-making process. This can be achieved through community-based programs that target women, men, and youth. So in the next slide, I will give the idea that if we work together, we can solve this problem. And in conclusion, gender equality considerations are critical in addressing the energy poverty crisis. We must involve women in all stages of policy and program design processes and ensure that their perspectives and needs are considered. Governments, civil society, academia, and the private sector must work together to create innovative financing mechanisms to support energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. By working together, as I mentioned, we can ensure that no one is left behind and that we achieve our goal of gender equality and universal access to energy services. Thank you.
Obrigado. Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for making it understandable for us, since you are such an expert that I was afraid that we will not understand, but at least I try to understand. A very inspirational presentation. Thank you very much for that. Dobrze, to teraz słuchaliśmy panią de Sousę. Kolejna będzie pani kierowniczka do spraw energii, klimatu i płci.
We've listened to Mrs. de Sousa. Next speaker is Mrs. Katharina Habersbrunner, who is the co-author of a report on gender and energy poverty developed as part of EmpowerMed, and it focuses on the coastal areas of the Mediterranean in order to reduce energy poverty and increase the health of persons affected by energy poverty, including energy poverty. And Ms. Habersbrunner, you have the floor for 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, dear Chair, dear attendees, dear panelists. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for organizing this important event. And I also like the idea of the co-chair to look at solutions. And I think we already have seen solutions because we have them and we have to implement them. And I'm here today as a representative of Women Engaged for Common Future, working on gender-just energy solutions worldwide, but also of a partner of the consortium of the EmpowerMed project, which works on energy poverty and is also able to provide some solutions in the Mediterranean countries. Next slide. Can I have the pointer, please? Thank you.
It's better when you say next slide.
Okay, so.
It will be
okay, yeah.
smoother.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so we already heard a lot about causes of energy poverty. We always say it's indecent housing, it's higher energy prices, it's low income. It's true, but what we have seen in the last year is also the fossil fuel dependency and the lock-ins, what we have seen. And anyhow, what is now worsening, it's a systemic and structural inequalities. And now the energy crisis shows like a spotlight that who is affected by the energy crisis, who is affected by energy poverty. And I think that is one important message, to work on the systemic and structural inequalities, to face energy poverty. And gender is part of all these causes here on energy poverty. Next slide, please. Yeah, we heard a lot of the data. What I share with you here is a current study of Eurofound, and it's very recent because household has been asked if they have been able to pay the energy bill. And what we here see overall is who is mostly affected and maybe not able to pay the energy bill. It's already the low income and vulnerable households. So again, the information, the argument that households, vulnerable households, being affected by many problems, also facing significantly the energy crisis and are affected by energy poverty. And what we see here also in terms of gender, that lone parents, mostly single-led households by women, they are mostly affected by energy poverty. And here what we see in the graph, it is an economic perspective. But energy poverty does not only have the economic gender perspective. And on the next slide, we see 4 dimensions we should consider and we should discuss about when we talk about energy poverty and gender, because it's important to include them all. So we have seen the economic part. So the economic part is because of the gender pay gap, because of the gender care gap. So women are working more in the households all over Europe, in the whole world, because of the gender pension gap. So if you have lower income during your work lifespan, so of course you have less income as pension. So it's more or less about 60% in Europe. So the gender pension gap leads to the economic situation, that there are women have less income. So that's one important dimension. But we have the physiological dimension, because women, they are more heat and cold sensitive because of the physiology, because of the body. They are more sensitive to extreme temperatures. And when we talk about energy poverty, now we have March, and we talked a lot about winter energy poverty, but in many countries, so not in my country at the moment, but I guess we have to face it, we have to talk about summer energy poverty. If you are not able to cool your home, and so I think that's very important, and it's also a gender issue, so to have extreme temperatures. So also with this physiological dimension, women are hit more. And we have the health dimension, and we can distinguish here mental health, physical health, and also social health. So we know on physical health, we have seen the example from Portugal. So heating, for example, with biomass can lead to indoor pollution. We have it in Europe, in our member states, so that women are more affected, women and children. We also see that there is cardiovascular diseases, bronchitis, headache, for example. That's because of energy poverty. And also mental and social health. It's stress, it's depression, it's stigmatization because you are not able to invite friends because you have a cool or too hot home, for example. It's a different impact for different genders. And the socio and cultural dimension. So we have we see our gender roles, we see who is doing the care work in the households, who is facing also time poverty, who is not represented in the decision-making bodies, even if the law would foresee it, because we have quotas, so we would like to have balanced bodies and decision-making gremiums, but I think that's also a very important dimension to consider. And these 4 dimensions needs to be considered when talking about policies, when talking about social policies, energy policies, work policies, for example. That is very important to see it from this perspective. Next slide, please. And regarding EmpowerMe, it's a project because here to look at solutions, that's one concrete Horizon 2020 projects in the Mediterranean countries. So it's a focus on gender, it's a focus on health, so the health impact of energy poverty, and it's also a focus on energy poverty. And here, all the activities, all the measures are coming from mobilization and capacity building, so to provide all the information what we already have on energy poverty, because we gained information. Of course, we need more, but there is information and there is knowledge. Very concrete activities on household visits, on workshops, on collective assemblies. So collective assemblies is a concept which is implemented, started in Barcelona. It's, for example, to invite affected people to develop jointly solutions, so not to have the asymmetric relationship between an energy advisor and between energy poor households, but being on the same level and to develop skills to face on energy poverty. So that is very interesting and can be implemented in many countries. So we have pilot sites. So I checked also the participants list, and I think many of you are here. So it's from Albania, Croatia, France, Italy, Slovenia, and Spain. So here in the country, we have some solutions. We develop recommendations to tackle energy poverty, and we do advocacy, and I will also share some recommendations and idea what we have. Next slide. Yeah, and maybe one point, Anna mentioned we need more data. That's crucial, and there is one study is from Austria about invisible energy poverty. And for example, a study from Austria in the cities of Graz and Vienna shows that there is 40% of unreported cases of energy poverty because people they feel affected by energy poverty through a self-assessment, but it's not sufficiently reflected in the statistics what we have. And it's also, there's a lot of underconsumption, and there's the effects of underconsumption, for example, can be also social isolation, to reject the support because you think, I can manage it, I can cope it. So there are, for example, at the moment, many students, so not suffering on poverty, but not heating the homes properly because of the fear of a high energy bill. It's to feel ashamed, for example, the fear of stigmatization. So there are many outcomes of underconsumption. So that also is very important to see how to collect this data of invisible energy. Next slide. And solutions. So for example, in the EmpowerMe project or in other projects, so we implement and we apply gender tools. And here it's also, we have with EIGE, with UN Women, we have many experts here today. So we have the gender tools we can implement, and it's from gender analysis just to have a baseline where we come from. For example, there are many tools, and I would like to focus on 2, what we do mainly in the EmpowerMe project. The first one is communication. think I repeat it all the time, but with a gender just communication, we can have quick wins. So to put more effort and attention on our language, on the pictures what we use, because we see so many stereotypes and we reinforce inequalities with our communication, and also the energy sector, which is very male dominated. So here we can improve a lot in short time to use gender just communication tools. And of course, it's policy and advocacy, so to develop policy recommendation for gender just energy and social policies, to include the experts, for example, and also to have an energy poverty definition or a concept including gender and vulnerable households. And finally, on the next slide, I come to the recommendations and idea, and it's a broad bunch from very general recommendations and very specific one. So the first one, of course, we have seen it's a broad topic, so we need another policy design to reshape our policy and to have a cross-sectoral coherent strategy, to include feminist organizations as political advisors, to have the right for everybody, for all, to clean, affordable energy for all, and to have inclusion and affordable accessibility at the forefront. So that's very general. The second, already mentioned by Anna, it's data collection and also definitions on EU and national level, so, and to include gender, for example. The third one is the program design and the implementation. So we have seen a lot of money facing the energy crisis in the last year. And in Germany, for example, the energy price cap comes into place from today, from the 1st of March. It's a great program, but it's not targeted. So it's really, everybody gets it, it's fine, but it's not socially inclusive and just, for example. So we need targeted programs. That's very important. And for example, EU as a role model, it could be an idea to have an energy poverty, an advisory group, for example, to invite all the experts, what we have, to pool the expertise and the knowledge, and to share it. And because what we have seen for the European Green Deal, what is a great flagship to decarbonize our societies, but we miss gender at all in the European Green Deal, so it will not work without the gender dimension. And finally, a very concrete recommendation is what we already have in the Renewable Energy Directive, so where we have included to protect the vulnerable households, the energy communities. So energy sharing, for example, we have to transpose it. Some member states that did it already, like Spain and Netherlands and Austria, but Germany is lagging behind, unfortunately. But here, with energy communities, we can include gender, we can include social justice, and so to have also women as change agents and prosumers. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Ms. Habersbrunner, for your presentation, and to all of you, free for your inspiration, recommendations and ideas. This is what President Papadimoulis asked us to do, so we must deliver the concrete solutions, and you did so. Thank you very much for that. With that, I want to ask you how you're doing. You're still alive? Yes, good. I know politicians are hesitant, they wish to speak. So my colleagues, for sure, they are ready to start speaking, but you need to hold on, because we have two more distinguished experts who will take the floor, and then the floor is yours, all yours. So we make a little change over here in the Presidium, and then we continue with the meeting. Thank you. Thank you very much. Because, yeah, we will have comments and questions to you. Okay, colleagues, so we continue. There was 30 seconds break for you, and now we continue, again switching to Polish. Wysłuchamy teraz prezentacji.
We shall now listen to the presentation of Mrs. Juliana Wahlgren, Director of the European Anti-Poverty Network. She's probably known to you because the network...
Are there any comments? Thank you very much, colleagues. So,
the European network since 2008 has been campaigning on the energy poverty and consumers in a vulnerable situation. It is now involved, among others, in the work of working group on consumers in a vulnerable situation, which was established by the European Commission and the Coalition Rights to Energy. Mrs. Wahlgren is the co-author of a handbook on energy poverty and campaign for right to energy to all European citizens. Mrs. Wahlgren, the floor is yours. 10 minutes for you, and thank you again for accepting our invitation.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, the European Parliament, the distinguished MPs, the national MPs and speakers. Thank you for this invitation. As mentioned before, I represent here the European Anti-Poverty Network. EAPN is a network of networks. So we are a network of 32 networks at national level and 12 European organizations working to tackle poverty and social exclusion. Just to begin with my intervention, I would like to say when I talk about women, I'm going to talk about women as in the concept of cisgender, but also I'll talk about all those who are expressing their gender and identifying themselves as women. I would like also to start by saying that poverty is a multidimensional issue and affects all aspects of life simultaneously. However, we as EAPN, we face a barrier to better understand the concrete impact of poverty in different groups due to the lack of disaggregated data, which is already covered before, and how we have not enough information on how policies and practice map the intersection of gender with multiple or intersectional inequalities. For us, gender and poverty are intertwined, and therefore to have meaningful policies, the program should address both perspectives at the same time and should also understand the historical inequalities impacting different communities in this society, just such as LGBTIQ, age, race, ethnicity, migrant background, and disability. But I'd like to bring us where we navigate as EAPN, and we try to fill the gaps in the socio-economic, anti-discrimination, and on energy policies. What we know as EAPN is that the European Union and member states all commit to these principles, but more in a soft manner. We don't see very much hard compromise in that regard, and what we really strive for is for effective and structural change. So where do we stand as EAPN, just that you understand? We try to bring more visibility to gender on social policies. We try to bring more the socio-economic aspect on gender policies, and then we try to fill the gap of both of class, socio-economic, and gender on energy policies. So there is here really an inconsistent approach, and there is really a loophole of an intersectional and transversal approach on these policies. And just to be more specific on how we try to recenter gender and other characteristics on social policies, how we try to recenter socio-economic characteristics on anti-discrimination, such as an example on the gender equality strategy, and how to recenter gender and socio-economic dimensions on energy policies. Before I enter the aspect mainly on gender poverty on energy, I'll try to bring some examples to make it easier for you and to see how it works. So I'm going to start with the gender equality strategy in a chapter, Thriving in a Gender Equal Economy, saying that diversity, equal opportunities to thrive and be economically independent, equal pay, equal access to finance, fair patient and care share burden. However, there is a blind spot there. we talk about a lot of labor market inclusion, but we forget that there is a lot of poverty for those families and women who are working. We talk about the term of working in poverty. So how shall we include the social dimension of poverty for those who are already included in the labor market, but are still under the poverty line? Another hoopla in the gender equality is the expectation, gender equality strategy, is the expectation to have labor market, social inclusion, education dimensions monitored by the European semester and its social scoreboard. For those who don't know, the social scoreboard is a list of indicators that measures the impact of social policies. However, there is only one indicator on gender, which is the employment gap. We know that the Eurobarometer covers that, but there is a lack of alignment between the data from the European semester and the social scoreboard and the reference from the Eurobarometer. So when it comes to concrete measures to the member states, we see an absence, a void of effective measures that could be applied. We also face the same inconsistencies in social policies when it comes to the gender blindness, let's say like that. Just to give you an example, we just approved in December the Council recommendation for minimum income. And why I'm talking about the social aspect, the gender aspect on social economic policies. Just to give you an example, the Council recommendation, we talk about a lot about the question of the non-take-ups. For those who don't know what is the concept of non-take-up is a phenomenon that represents the lack of access to social protection and social benefits. And this is very important to talk about because these are structural measures that could be combined to energy urgent measures. So when you have a big percentage of the population, for example, 40% in Belgium, that have not access or not adequate enough to have access to social protection and are already under the poverty line and have no structured energy support for long-term solutions, it's a struggle that we have to combine all together. So we have to talk about energy crisis and energy measures, but we also have to take a look at the social protection benefits that are there and how people can benefit and access them. But let's go back to the European Green Deal and also the Fit for 55 and where our struggle is as EAPN, because there is a socioeconomic blindness in the European Green Deal, and there is a gender blindness in the European Green Deal. And we as EAPN, we try to navigate and bring more solutions for both aspects. What is important to mention is that when it comes to women or women-led families that are exposed to poverty in the context of the energy crisis, we have at least three experiences. We have those who are struggling to pay the bills or to buy food. We have those who are struggling to reduce consumption, and then that's leading to psychological and health issues. And you have those who have not access to funding scheme in their constituencies. So this is the reality of many women and women-led families across the European Union. And what are the problems? How policies are responding to that? So what you have, for example, is that there is a lack of target measures for women and for poor families when it comes to economic income support, like vouchers, like subsidies for bills. They are not targeting specifically the needs of women and families led by women. We don't have target funding also saying there is a specific funding that is targeted for women living or at risk of poverty. All the solutions are very universal and they are not targeting specific groups or specific demands. We are putting more burdens on the consumers with low income, so this has a disproportionate impact. And there is also a reflection that we bring as EAPN. It's going to be impossible to combine the success of the green transition if we continue with the current immediate measures. So we will not have the capacity with the member states to address both the needs of a green and effective transition and the social protection at the same time. But let's move forward in terms of solutions, because we want to be constructive and solution-oriented. And for us, as mentioned before, the participation of people experiencing poverty in this process is very important. They bring the knowledge, but also the expertise, the living expertise that they face in everyday life. More specifically to the member state, because the European Green Deal and the 50 for 55 now has a focus at the national level, and until June 2023, you as member states, you have to present the new electricity and climate plans and see how they are adjusting to some electricity demands and also some targets in terms of the energy crisis. It would be great if we could prioritize target investments and actions for energy pool and women. But also, when it comes to the right of a decent income, we have now the minimum income recommendation. It would be great to see how member states are going to transpose it. But it's also important that we ensure that all families and all women have adequate social protection benefits, because they lead to structural changes. So if we can combine income support for energy bills and energy crisis with structural support coming from social protection benefits, we can find at least a good solution in the long term. I also would like to call you to reflect about a ban on disconnections. I think as well, we need to think about all those families who are being disconnected in the grid. And it's really important that we think about an adequate income or an adequate amount for the bills of these people living in energy poverty. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wahlgren, and thank you for the constructive remarks to our debate, which we will launch shortly. But before that, the last speaker on my list is close friend of our committee, always present here whenever we need her, and her agency, European Institute for Gender Equality in Vilnius. So the Lithuanians here must be very proud you have this great institute in your country. I give you the floor, Director, for presenting your position on this important topic, and I want to thank you in the name of the committee for all the support you're providing to us and to the member states. You all probably have worked with EIGE on several occasions, and we all appreciate the EIGE's work. So once again, thank you very much, Director, for being with us, and I look forward to hear you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your kind words. It's always a pleasure to be here and to work with you. So, dear honourable members of the European Parliament and national parliaments, and dear colleagues, it is with great pleasure and a necessity that I'm here today to put an issue up front and centre that is gripping the continent. Many of us, and I'm sure it also goes for you, but also for me, we go about our daily routine without really thinking about it. We just do it. We go through the daily routine every day, more or less the same thing. But as we heard from my colleagues, a lot of people have to think about their every single move, literally every single move, because their every move comes at a cost. 34 million Europeans were unable to afford to keep their homes warm. And that's what we know from 2018. 34 million can't heat their homes properly. Imagine now how many more are suffering in times of dramatic inflation, where skyrocketing energy prices leave many questioning, can I afford to eat and heat at the same time? Basic human rights are being negotiated. And we heard it already, but I'm going to repeat again. In the fallout of energy poverty, certain households are more vulnerable than others. But talking about energy poverty on a household level, well, very relevant. The term household is still too abstract and broad a concept. It obscures important dynamics. What does energy poverty look like past the front door? We need some human context. Who should be worried about? Because not all members of a household are equally affected by energy poverty. Some spend more time at home. EIGE's evidence proves that women take on the brunt of unpaid care compared to men, from childcare through to domestic care, meaning they spend more time at home based on the gendered perception that women are caregivers. And to give you a few data, in 2020, women were twice as likely as men to provide the bulk of care for children under 12 years old, and unfortunately in 2020, the data are still the same. One would think we would learn from the crisis, but we don't. Also, what our evidence indicates is that in times of crisis, this inequality worsens alongside many others. You have also heard about the spikes of domestic violence, for example. Women tend to have lower incomes due to gender pay and pension gaps. So energy poverty, and again, I repeat what my colleague said, hits harder for women because they simply do not earn as much. It's simple mathematics. Single mothers, mentioned before, are particularly exposed. And I think it was already mentioned, but I would like to say again that Eurofound, our sister agency, did a survey last spring which focused on the ability to pay energy bills, and they found that close to 50% of the respondents who are single mothers, 50% of the single mothers who responded, anticipate difficulties paying their bills in the next 3 months. Imagine. This is probably not the full picture. It's incredible the lengths one will go to pay a bill. I have heard of single mothers asking their children to stay in libraries to do their homework until closing time, because at home it's too expensive to keep the lights on. Remember, I mentioned pension gaps earlier. Well, I've also heard of older women staying on buses longer to keep warm because they cannot afford their heating bills. So I've given you a clear enough picture, and now it's time to turn to EU-level action. Energy must be a guarantee to all citizens as a basic right. But equally, given who I have highlighted amongst the most vulnerable today, we need to adopt a gender lens to solving energy poverty to ensure that the most vulnerable can make it through the day, knowing that tomorrow is still possible. There are discussions on the way for the Social Climate Fund to provide financial support to vulnerable households, but no agreement has been reached. Lip service doesn't service anybody. Political will and active solutions do. And we have to ensure that the solution isn't at the expense of an existing problem, which is only going to make things worse. For example, reducing the operating hours of kindergarten as a way to save energy swells the burden of care for women even more. From a perspective of safety, switching off public lighting, that is chosen as a solution by many communities, switch off public lighting at night could put women's safety in jeopardy. So we have to think clearly, also in a gender-sensitive way, about possible solutions. Well, again, energy poverty affects different groups of women and men very differently. So how then do you develop tailored solutions? I will give you an example with a 3 steps forward approach, because I like to think positively, because we can solve this. Step 1, we need to eliminate deepening inequalities for a fair and just transition in energy and other areas. EIGE's Gender Equality Index, which I hope you all know, the Gender Equality Index measures the progress of gender equality in the European Union at a member state and EU level. We look at 6 different domains. We update it on a yearly basis, and I invite you to look at that index. It gives valuable information about your country. It makes very clear at the country level and also EU level where the challenges lie and the solutions lie. And what I would like to say here is that our focus for this year's index will be on the gender dimension of the Green Deal, where we will be publishing evidence related throughout the year. So that was step 1. Step 2, energy poverty affects women and men, not households. The EU and member states must collect gender statistics to appreciate women and men's different needs, so in times of crisis the response is fit for each and every purpose. Step 3, resources are your recourse. EIGE's gender mainstreaming tools are abundant, from assessments to budgeting to monitoring and evaluation. They are ready to use and come with step-by-step guidance. And again, I would like to invite you to look at our website. We have a gender mainstreaming platform where you find all the instruments that you would need to go through this process step to step and to see where the challenges lie. So those were my 3 steps, my 3 proposals for solutions in the future. And there is nothing stopping us from starting now. I look forward to seeing it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Scheele. And I told you she has a lot of expertise in her agency. Thank you very much. And thank you for 3 steps approach which you proposed. The resources are very important also for running EIGE. So we keep fingers crossed for that as well. So colleagues, I give you 5 minutes break to take coffee and tea, which is outside. And then we come back 10:35. So you can have 5 minutes break. Thank you.